It's something I think about all the time, yeah.
Captain Al Haynes was flying United Flight 232 back on July 19, 1989. The flight from Denver to Chicago was carrying 296 passengers, none of whom knew just how drastically their lives would soon change. Turns out a small crack in the fan disc of the engine located in the tail of the plane sent pieces of metal flying, cutting all 3 hydraulic lines, eventually making steering the plane quite the challenge for pilots.
Okay, so you know we have almost no controllability.
So, with very little control over where the plane was headed, the crew was quick to connect with Kevin Bachman. He was Sioux City's air traffic controller at the time.
United 232 Heavy, you're going to have to widen out just slightly to your left, sir, to make the turn to final.
So it's no secret that communication was key to landing this plane. Captain Haynes remained calm. He even displayed a sense of humor through it all.
You're cleared to land on any runway. You want to be particular, make it a runway, huh?
Passengers on board were told to brace for impact as Haynes and his co-pilots attempted the crash landing on, yes, a runway at Sioux City's airport. Just before landing, though, the plane veered right, the wing clipped the runway, which in turn caused the plane to roll. Fuel was leaked and the aircraft ignited. Many thought everyone on board would be victims at this point. But in the moments following the crash, a number of people found themselves only battered and bruised.
Believe it or not, the most vivid memory I have is waking up in the cockpit and finding this tremendous pressure on my back. And it was from my seat and the second officer's seat who were on top of me.
The 4 pilots were among the survivors, 184 to be exact. 112 did not survive, which for Haynes haunts him to this very day. And to this very day, he says the hardest thing for him has been finding acceptance.
Accept the things that happen, post-traumatic stress, to accept it and not try to pass it off or forget it. It's made me very strong in accepting everything.
July 19th. It was a typical day for Gary Brown and the Woodbury County Emergency Management Team. That is, until they got a 911 call a little after 3 in the afternoon. A DC-10 airplane, Flight 232, on its way to Chicago from Denver, lost use of an engine and had to make an emergency landing at Sioux City's airport. Prepared with crews at the airport, Brown watched the plane hit the runway at 4:01.
He was coming in fast. He was coming in, and as he touched down at the end of the runway, he came down real hard, and his landing gear went through the cement.
Hundreds upon hundreds of EMS personnel from 40 communities worked to aid the 296 passengers and crew on board. The scene? Brown describes it as quiet clockwork. Everybody's training kicking into high gear.
You know, there was plenty of activity going on, but it was a group of both paid and volunteer professional people that knew what their role was.
196 patients were transported to the 2 Sioux City hospitals in record time of just under 1 hour.
That's hiking.
Many fell into the hands of emergency RN Kcau of Mercy Medical Center. Kcau, along with hundreds of extra staff on hand, were split up into teams, each with a doctor and moving very quickly.
I remember a young child coming into the emergency room, and the patient was having difficulty breathing, and I remember that patient being intubated by anesthesia right there in the hallway immediately when the patient arrived. It was just like instant that patient was given an airway.
Thanks to training, Kcau says nothing seemed chaotic. She felt well assured staff could handle the situation.
We do this every day on a smaller scale. We have never done anything this big with this number of patients. But no, never thought we wouldn't get through this.
Thanks to everyone's efforts, 184 people survived, more than the 112 who didn't. Some responders still talk about that day, others not so much. Either way, the event has helped them grow into the hard workers they are today, who will never forget the many lost, the many saved of Flight 232.
That you can do it, even in a small community. The training's there. You just have to rise to the occasion.
I am very proud of our tri-state area. I'm very proud of the people who put their lives on the line and their hearts into this thing, and in some cases have had to work through what they were exposed to that day in a significant way over the years. I think this community can be very proud.
There's just memories there of this airplane crash, and I can't come to discard it. Just can't. It's just a museum relic now.
It's a tattered and burned up passport. Like Rod Vetter, it survived the crash landing of United Flight 232 and today offers daily reminders of what happened in Sioux City 25 years ago.
I think about this and how fortunate I was and how unfortunate some other people were. So I try to make the best out of that.
July 19, 1989 started out like so many other days for Vetter. He was headed back to Chicago after 2 days of work in Denver.
It was a Thursday afternoon and partly cloudy and just a normal afternoon flight.
But at about 3:15 that Thursday afternoon, while crossing the Iowa sky at 37,000 feet, things changed forever.
My first thought and instinct told me we just had a bomb go off. Then I realized that it couldn't be a bomb because we still had pressure. It didn't depressurize.
Vetter would later learn that the fan rotor in the number 2 engine on the tail of the plane disintegrated, cutting all hydraulic lines, leaving the plane almost uncontrollable. Vetter was seated in 19D at the apex of the wing. And as the United jet looped its way toward Sioux City, the former naval aviator began to understand the gravity of the situation.
Captain Haynes came on the PA and said, "This is going to be a very difficult landing. Practice all of your emergency procedures and listen to the flight crew."
Okay, so you know we have almost no controllability.
I got into the brace position and I decided I need to take one more look. And I looked outside about when I could see the trees. And I went, oh, we're really going fast.
Unfortunately, Vetter was correct. It's estimated that United 232 slammed into the runway at 247 miles an hour. Airspeed for a normal touchdown is about 160.
It was like falling out of a second-story window in a lounge chair. It was soft but harsh.
The plane cartwheeled, broke apart, and partially came to rest in a cornfield. After escaping the smoke and flame that followed the crash landing, Vetter says he remembers being worried not about his injuries, but rather the quick response he saw from rescue crews.
I realized that there's fire trucks coming through this corn, and this corn's over our heads. And I'm going, okay, we got to get out of here. I would hate to have everybody that could survive an airplane crash and then get run over by a fire truck pulling in here.
Like most of the 184 survivors, Vetter ended up at Mercy Medical Center, or Marion Health Center as it was known then, still in shock, trying to make sense of where he was and what had just happened.
And the nurse comes in and there's a television monitor up above, and I'm watching this plane crash through wire, through a chain link fence type thing. And I went, wow, where was that? And she said, that was you guys. I went, wow, I had no clue. No clue whatsoever.
Vetter suffered only a broken vertebrae in his neck, and after battling initial bouts of post-traumatic stress syndrome,
it occasionally pops into my head when I'm driving. Is this bridge that I'm driving under going to fall on me?
Today he has no crash-related issues and flies regularly. He occasionally talks with groups about his experience.
It's healing. Makes one start to appreciate your life. And that's something I promised I would do every day, and I still do.
Beginning Friday, Vetter and his fellow survivors will no doubt share stories of half-melted memorabilia, and while looking back at that day that no one could have predicted, say thank you and perhaps close another chapter in the story of Flight 232.
I just want people to know that we're all appreciative of everything that was done by everyone in this horrific accident.
It was shortly after Flight 232 crashed that former Briarcliff employee Jim Wharton describes as hours he can recall moment by moment. At the time, he was the assistant to the school's president. He was told to get to Briarcliff as soon as possible. Survivors were going to start flooding in.
I can still see them as they got off of that van, caked in blood, mud, traumatized.
It was summer, July, and dorms were empty. The over 100 survivors were given a roof over their head, warm bed, and a meal. The following day, the first wave of family members came. Pure pandemonium, Wharton recalls.
When that first bus arrived, it was chaos, wanting to know about the status of their son, their daughter, their mom, their dad.
Upstairs in Toller Hall, survivor names were read out loud alphabetically.
If you were looking for somebody with a C, and we were already on a D, it wasn't good.
But amongst the waves of people lost in despair, there was one quiet place. Many shared their thoughts and prayers here at the school's Lady of Grace Chapel. The chapel's prayer book, almost a history book, if you will, of the feelings and thoughts of those in mourning.
We love you. May God take you. My daughter Katie, soon to be a United employee. May God fly with her. For the victims and survivors of the crash at 232, for their families and friends, I love you. We all do.
Despair, anger, sadness, these prayers belong to who Wharton says he remembers the most, the ones who didn't have a good ending to this story. It was nearly a week, Wharton says, the nearly 250 survivors and family stayed on campus. But the healing and mourning went way beyond that. That's why Wharton says he's looking forward to this weekend as we remember Flight 232. It'll be a time he's waited for, to reunite, remember, and finally bringing that fateful time in July of '89 to a close.
This is a long mourning period, and I think all of them are anxious to get this weekend in, to tell the story to whoever will listen to their story and get on with it. And I think that's kind of, this is a closure.
I woke up in the cockpit with Dudley talking to me, the second officer, and then
we talked about Al not making it, as a matter of fact.
no, they thought I died.
We heard from Denny in the top of the pile, and Dudley and I were conversing back and forth a little bit. Dudley said, I think we lost Al. We hadn't heard from him for quite a while.
I was unconscious most of the time.
Yeah, I was came to a stop upside down. I was trying to get out of my seatbelt, and I was pressing the button. It was a release flat. So I was like, Daddy, give me out of this stupid seatbelt. That's what I said to him. So when he heard that, he proceeded to get me out.
It's very emotional, and you know, we come back here just wanting to just thank everybody who volunteered and helped out that day. And
it means a lot to be able to actually meet the crew and the people that were involved with the rescue. It just brings a lot of closure. And it's really touching.
Saturday served as a joyous reunion for many, but of course July 19th is bittersweet. While some can be grateful for survival, other families are missing loved ones.
Gladys Cooper.
As the names of the 112 lives lost were read Saturday, hundreds sat in silent reflection, the survivors remembering that not everyone was so lucky.
We will never ever forget the 112. We'll just never do it. We refuse to. I know I speak for all the survivors when I say that I think about them all the time.
During the ceremony, the heroic actions of 25 years ago were remembered.
I just want to say how much we respect and appreciate this community and everybody that responded.
The life-saving actions of that day by dozens of volunteers have been well documented.
We had no control of where it was going to happen, but I'm glad it happened here. We have a tradition in this community of helping people, helping individuals, helping groups when we have tragedies like this.
The families of those that perished ended Saturday's service near where so many lives were lost. A new memorial garden will forever keep their memories alive.
This ground we're on, to me now, is sacred ground, and it has been for 25 years. There were 112 lives lost, and we're standing on the ground where some of those tragedies happen, but some good has come out of it too. So that's what we have to keep in mind. But truly, this is a very special place. This is sacred ground.
Nearby the memorial, these scuff marks are where the plane tires first hit the runway. They provided family and survivors the opportunity to remember the tragedy that happened right here. Mayor Bob Scott says this is the last event formally that will be held, but Sioux City will always welcome survivors, families, and first responders. In Sioux City, Allison Warren, ABC 9 News.
On the 25th anniversary of Flight 232, you'll find Bruce Benham and Brad Bayless sitting next to each other at the reflection ceremony. But on July 19th, 25 years ago, the two were strangers sitting one row apart. They didn't know it then, but the crash started a lifelong friendship.
Brad and I didn't know each other until after the plane crash. A reporter or somebody's talking, say, I was just talking to Bruce Benham. He only lives about a mile from you. Do you guys know each other? And he said, no, I don't. He said, well, you ought to give him a call. So he did, and we've been buddies ever since.
The pair are close now, but know their friendship got an odd start.
No, never met anybody under weirder circumstances for sure. We sure didn't plan it, that's for sure, you know.
It's unusual circumstances that brought them to Sioux City then, and it's the 25th anniversary of Flight 232 that's bringing them back now. The crash is something seared into both of their memories.
And I made the mistake of, peeking under my arm outside, and the angle at which we were coming in and the speed, that was really the first time I thought we weren't going to make it. So I just put my head back down and told my wife that I loved her. We'd just been married in February of that year, so we'd only been married for over 4 months.
We knew the plane was in trouble because it was flying very erratically, almost shaking and shuddering as it was flying, and we were constantly turning right.
The memories of the crash come in quickly on this special day, but both Bruce and Brad say they needed to come back to Sioux City, ready to remember the flight that built their friendship.
To come back just to see fellow passengers, but more so to thank the crew and the people of Sioux City that did just an amazing job of, everything.
If you take a walk around Briarcliff University, it looks like an ordinary college campus, but in the days following the 232 tragedy, it took on a much different feel.
We had first the people who were not seriously injured who stayed here until they returned home. Then we had people who were waiting to identify bodies, and they stayed here, and we really became a United Command Center for about a week.
One place folks paid a visit during the open house was the Vista Lounge. It served as a place where friends and family members came to get information about loved ones involved in the crash.
We sat, I guess, in this room, as you said, but it didn't look like this at all. What I recall, I think it's like a lot of folding chairs, maybe a couple of tables. There was a lot of commotion, people in and out,
Amidst the chaos and confusion that followed the crash, the college chapel offered some solitude to hundreds of people arriving on campus. Just as in 1989, the chapel offers healing today.
A number of the people who were with us during those days spent majority of their time in this chapel. Just obviously what they had gone through was incredibly traumatic, and so they needed some time to ask questions of God, I guess, and this is where they found that refuge.
More than 50 children were on Flight 232, many too young to remember what happened. The open house offered them a chance to pay the respect to those who offered care, as if they were their own children.
A lot of great people came around from surrounding areas, did a lot of amazing things that really helped people recuperate and people survive that were not in good conditions there. So really appreciate everything they did for us.
These two brothers were ages 2 and 6 on the day of the crash. They ended up separated at the hospital, but luckily they were wearing the same shirt, something that didn't go unnoticed by the nurses.
A nurse in the hospital, she saw, I don't know who it was, one of us when we were young, and she said to my mom or dad, she said, I saw another boy wearing that same shirt, and then that's how our parents knew that the other two were alive. And